The assumption about a ketogenic diet that the medical profession had for the past several decades was erroneous and detrimental to the movement.
Ketoacidosis.
You stay away from anything ketones because you'll get ketoacidosis and you'll die. I rethought the whole way of eating concept that most people have, like low carb is the way to go, low fat is the way to go, vegan is the way to go, carnivore is the way to go. At the end of the day, none of that matters. All that matters is, can you access stored body fat and can you burn ketones in the absence of glucose? How you get there is irrelevant to me. Nobody needs more than 150 grams of carbs a day. And I can eat 300 grams of carbs a day, but I don't need more than 150. And I see people at the gym all the time and they're on the treadmill every day. You are going to the gym and you are sweating through that every single day so you can have a few more bites of something you probably shouldn't have had in the first place. Like, do you see how insane that is to try and build a fast metabolism? In the animal kingdom, fast metabolism is an indicator of early death.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to figure out what's the most amount of food I can eat and not gain weight, how about if I figure out what's the least amount of food I can eat, have all the energy I want, maintain muscle mass, even build muscle mass, never get sick, and most importantly, not be hungry. What's funny about this, people brag about being in ketosis. You know, ketosis, it's an osis. It's not a good thing. So
It's a stress.
It's a stress.
Why do you think we have such a high percentage of metabolically inflexible humans in the United States?
Well, I mean, I would say it goes back to
Mark Sisson, thank you so much for coming on the Keto Camp podcast in person. Welcome, my friend.
It's great to be here, Ben. Thanks for having me.
You're not too far away, although traffic might be an issue, but you made the drive up here from South Beach.
Yep.
And I was just telling you, we're 670 plus episodes in on the podcast, and I can't believe this is the first time you've been on. I've been such a huge admirer of your work. I have 2 of your books here and your other books back there. The OG of metabolic flexibility. And I actually want to start there.
Sure. Yeah.
Studies show 88%, 93% of American adults are metabolically inflexible.
Right.
Sugar burners, right?
Right.
And Harvard is predicting that by the year 2030, about half of the population will be obese.
Right.
So they're essentially metabolically inflexible. Or in other words, in a keto deficiency. They could really use keto. So why do you think we have such a high percentage of metabolically inflexible humans in the United States?
Well, I mean, I would say it goes back to the origin of breakfast and cereals and breads and a grain-based diet, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture recommending that we get 6 to 11 servings of grains every day. The prevalence of sugar having crept up linearly until it was almost exponential for the past few decades. We become a carb-based society, and when you eat nothing but carbs, or when you eat predominantly carbs, your body never gets a signal that it has to burn fat for energy. So all you do is go through life storing fat. You go through life typically with high levels of circulating insulin as a result of the amount of carbohydrates in your diet. The insulin locks the fat in the fat cells. The brain goes, where's my glucose? I don't know how to burn ketones. Ultimately the cycle repeats itself. When you eat again, you eat more carbs again, you raise the blood sugar, you increase the insulin, and it becomes this vicious cycle that people are locked in, some people for their entire lives. And without the knowledge, without the understanding of how the body works and how easy it is to reverse that cycle and start tapping in your fat stores, start training your body to build a metabolic machinery to burn fats, to utilize ketones freely, to not have your nervous system go into shock in the absence of glucose and start to secrete cortisol and other relatively destructive hormones in that regard. It's a pretty easy concept, and yet the execution is the most difficult part. And that's where you ask why are we so metabolically inflexible? And I would say it's just the prevalence of processed, sugary foods around us that is beckoning us everywhere we go.
Yeah. It's interesting because when we look at the 1970s, and you've seen photos of the beaches in 1970s versus...
I was on the beaches in the 1970s.
Yeah, you were on the beaches. Yeah. Mark was there looking ripped like you do today at the age 70 years old right now, right? Yeah. But if we compare the photos in the 70s versus now, completely different image. Yeah. We see people that are overweight and obese. And keto is a big tool in that. It's not the only tool, right? Yeah. Metabolic flexibility is the goal. But I'd love for you to share a little bit about why you started to fall in love with keto, and then we'll talk about some of the drawbacks of keto as well.
Yeah. Well, I started a long time ago just looking at human performance and how diet was a critical aspect of achieving not just good body composition, ideal body composition, but also enhancing sports performance and things like that. So as a former athlete, I looked at dietary manipulation as a way to improve my performance. As I retired from sports and I started thinking more about just a general lifestyle and what it would take for me to retain my strength and my fitness without so much pain and suffering and sacrifice for the rest of my years, I realized that so much of the body composition that we talk about, so much of the energy that I want to have access to, comes from food choices and the way we can intervene in the body's hormone cycle to cause certain things to happen that we want to happen, like building muscle and burning fat, and prevent other things from happening, like storing fat, becoming inflamed. And all of this is kind of based on epigenetics and the signals that we give our body. Certainly food is fuel, but within that fuel there are signals, and there are certain things that the body does in response to the intake of those fuels. So I started looking at evolutionary biology as the sort of premise. I was always interested in evolution as a student, as a pre-med student in college. And then modern genetic science was just starting to come on the scene. You started to understand in the 70s and 80s and certainly in the 90s that everything that happens to us happens at a level of gene expression. So whenever there's a study done, now for sure, it looks at what genes are turned on and what genes are suppressed. And that really only emerged in the 70s and 80s. Before that, it was like maybe thought to be, it was a theory, but it wasn't proven. Now we have the means to prove that when you do an experiment and you show that certain genes are turned on, you go, okay, that's pretty cool. Now I've found this hidden genetic switch, that I can manipulate. So as I got looking at the evolutionary signals, the models from evolution, it became clear to me that we evolved over 2.5 million years, some say 3 million years as humans, in this crucible of scarcity, harsh conditions, certain types of food. And the genetic recipe that we have today reflects those millions of years of evolution. And so if we can figure out ways in which to turn on those genes that build muscle and burn fat and turn off certain other harmful genes, which aren't necessarily harmful, they're just like the genes that cause inflammation aren't bad genes, they're just responding to a signal where the body thinks you're in an inflamed state, you're under attack from something. So I created a program called the Primal Blueprint, which is my first real synthesis of all these things that I learned in my studies. And the Primal Blueprint described these 10 Primal Blueprint laws, which are pretty basic human behavioral laws. Eat lots of plants and animals, move around a lot at a low level of aerobic activity, get lots of play, get lots of sleep, sun exposure, lift weights a couple of times a week, sprint once in a while. And that formed the template for a pretty cool way of living and looking at ways in which anybody could access better health if they were to tap into these hidden genetic switches. For 5 or 6 or 8 years after I wrote the book, I'm like, this is amazing. I feel great. I'm onto something. I did what I call the carbohydrate curve years ago. I don't know if you've seen it, but many people have now copied it, and it showed different levels of carbohydrate intake and what happens as a result of that, in general. I lived according to the Primal Blueprint for 5 or 6 years. I was getting great results, and I'm a researcher, and I'm always looking at ways to improve performance. And I started delving into ketogenic diets, and I thought, well, this is next level paleo. This is next level primal stuff.
What year was that?
This goes back to 2008 or 9.
Way before most people knew anything about keto.
And it became it was a thought process for me for a while. And then I started really looking at the research, and I started, Finney and Volek came on the scene and started really writing in-depth stuff about how the assumption about a ketogenic diet that the medical profession had for the past several decades was erroneous and detrimental to the movement.
Yeah, ketoacidosis.
You stay away from anything ketones because you'll get ketoacidosis and you'll die.
You know that the same video from Mayo Clinic, well, a video from Mayo Clinic is the first video that shows up on YouTube when you search keto, about ketoacidosis.
It's just crazy. So I started down my keto path, fully understanding that this was a tool, that it wasn't something that I wanted to engage in for the rest of my life. And I know a lot of people who are keto, they would claim to be keto all the time. I'm not.
Me neither.
I wrote a book called The Keto Reset Diet, which described the way in which we could use a ketogenic diet to achieve metabolic flexibility, reset the metabolism so that we would be better at accessing body fat for energy, or accessing ketones in the brain in the absence of glucose. And this metabolic flexibility has become kind of I rethought the whole way of eating concept that most people have. Like, people would say, well, low carb is the way to go. People say low fat is the way to go. People say vegan is the way to go. Carnivore is the way to go. So at the end of the day, none of that matters. All that matters is, can you access stored body fat and can you burn ketones in the absence of glucose? That's metabolic flexibility. So how you get there is irrelevant to me. You can get there through various means, which include certain cycles of training layered onto certain cycles of eating and not eating. So there, and then
fasting,
within that, long-term fasting. So but at the end of the road, which I call the Holy Grail, is this metabolic flexibility. So for me, it was a revelation to understand that while ketogenic diets and being keto is a cool thing to do, and I have friends that are keto, they've been keto for 10 years. God bless them. I like to eat other things too much. And I wanted to retain my, not just my ability to expand my palate, but also to be flexible in my lifestyle enough that I wasn't that guy who, can't eat at that restaurant because of this or whatever. So the metabolic flexibility thing is, I think it's taken off. Rob Wolf and I sort of started talking about this term initially 10 years ago, maybe even more, maybe 15 years ago. And it's now sort of entered the lexicon, if you will.
Yeah, it is the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
And you guys do a really good job educating people on why this is very important. If only burning sugar and being a sugar burner is a form of metabolic inflexibility, wouldn't another form of metabolic inflexibility be only burning fat and ketones, like we see with those who are strict keto long-term?
You could argue that. On the other hand, we don't lose our ability to burn sugar. So sugar doesn't require some manipulation of the mitochondria to get to that point. I don't know whether this goes back hundreds of millions of years in our evolution, but we don't really lose the ability to burn sugar, or glucose in this case. We may lose the sensitivity, and so we may have issues when we eat it. We may have insulin issues, but that doesn't mean that it's. I don't think it's as bad as just being a sugar burner and just depending on carbs your whole life and never burning off your stored fat and accumulating 2, 3, 4, 5 pounds a year every year for decades until you're 280 pounds. That's just sort of not how we were designed.
Agreed that burning sugar and not fat is more detrimental than just burning fat and not sugar, glucose. But I do see a lot of people in my space who are very dogmatic about keto.
Yeah.
And I used to be, when I first got into keto in 2014, Mark, very dogmatic. At this time, I owned a CrossFit gym here in Miami, actually, and I was teaching all my CrossFit students about keto and fasting. They did not want to hear that message.
Yeah. Did you teach them about rhabdo at the same time?
Yeah, I did talk about rhabdo. But I was very dogmatic, and I soon realized that it's really more about flexibility and sustainability, what you teach about, what you teach.
Yeah.
But not only with myself, I've seen so many people just do keto harder or do carnivore harder to the detriment of their health, where now they have thyroid conditions, they're losing their hair, weight loss stalls or weight gain. So I see it become an issue when we become too dogmatic and just put ourselves in this box. And this is coming from keto camp, right? Somebody who loves keto. So what are your thoughts on, I know we have friends who do it and they're successful, but for most people, do you think being in a continuous state?
No, I don't. I mean, as I said, I think keto is a great tool to reset your metabolism. And when I say a tool to reset your metabolism, even that would be like a strategic 3 to 6 week program if you are, if you're really out of whack, if you're really out of sorts.
Why 3 to 6 weeks? Is that because you want to get them keto adapted, and that's where you think the time frame
I think
occurs?
the time frame is there. I think it optimizes around 6 weeks. So what I've always said is like you take athletes who start to adopt a ketogenic way of training and a ketogenic way of dieting. Within 6 weeks, they get 80% of the results they're ever going to get. But it might take 2 years to get the next 20%, to the point where a lot of athletes avoided a ketogenic training program because they were unwilling to fall back a little bit for this season on the hopes that in 2 seasons they'll be 10% better, right? So it's a curve in which the results happen in general with most people who are going to respond well to a ketogenic diet within 3 to 6 weeks. And then I would say, okay, then take, do your blood work and check everything, and then start to reintroduce a little bit more carbs. Not a lot more. I mean, I've said for a long time, nobody needs more than 150 grams of carbs a day. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, if you're a top competitive athlete and you're grinding it out, and
that's an exception.
That's an exception. But most reasonably healthy, reasonably fit individuals, myself included, don't need more than 150 grams of carbs a day. I mean, I can eat 300 grams of carbs a day, but I don't need more than 150, because that's really all it takes to refill the glycogen stores, which is really all you're doing with carbohydrates. If you're metabolically flexible throughout the day, you're still deriving 95% of your energy for every activity you do from stored body fat or from the fat that you're eating in your meals.
That's an important thing you just said there. I mean, if you could elaborate on that, like you get your calories from the plate of food, as you mentioned, or from your body fat.
Yeah. So as a keto adapted, metabolically flexible person, every time you choose not to eat, you kind of go, this is kind of cool, because I know it's going to take me 500 calories to get to through the next 6 hours, and it's all coming from me. It's all coming from my stored body fat, which is, I want that throughput. I want to be rotating that stock of fat. I don't want to be just accumulating it and never tapping into it. I want it to rotate in and out of the fat cells. I think there's a certain amount of health and detoxing involved in that process as well. But the 150 grams a day, it seems to be a pretty standard kind of set point for a lot of people. So you use keto to get to reset your metabolism. Then you maintain that flexibility for as long as you want. It's easier if you work out a lot. It's even easier if you vary your workouts between long, slow, distance, some tempo work, some weight training, some speed work, which is what my routine is now. So I feel like I've combined the best elements of my diet, which is not carb-free, and is not, it would, I guess on a day-to-day basis, you could say it looks ketogenic, but some days it's not. So some days it just doesn't have fat. I wouldn't even call it a ketogenic diet. I just say, it doesn't have carbs. Some days it doesn't have carbs. I wouldn't even think to say, oh, today I was keto. Some days it has carbs. Because I'm metabolically flexible, I'm in and out, it doesn't matter. My body, the metabolic flexibility describes your body's ability to extract energy from whatever substrate it needs for the job at hand. So if it's a low-level activity, you're burning fat. So you can drive energy from the fat stored in your body, from the fat stored in your muscles, from the fat on your plate of food, from the glycogen stored in your muscles, from the glucose in your bloodstream, from the ketones that your liver makes in the absence of glucose. All of these are substrates that if you're metabolically flexible, the body can tap into without even you noticing it, or without even having to think about what do I do to
without having to count calories and log your food in.
That's the definition of metabolic flexibility. Yeah. So to get there, ideally, you do some manipulation of the diet to encourage the body to tap into stores. You literally have to either withhold carbohydrate or withhold glucose or withhold food in general, and the body upregulates those enzyme systems and those genetic sequences that build metabolic machinery. You increase the number of mitochondria you have. It's called mitochondrial biogenesis. Those mitochondria don't go away when you go out of keto.
Right.
As long as you use them, as long as you are doing some amount of lifting weights, some amount of high intensity activity, some amount of long distance movement that isn't even making you sweat but is still movement, some amount of sprinting. So the that arena, that sphere that you arrive at of metabolic flexibility includes some amount of diet swings one way or the other. It doesn't matter. You don't lose your keto card. You don't get kicked out of metabolic flexibility camp because you messed up a couple of times. Sometimes, there are people who will, go way off the wagon a day or two and then go, this means I just got to go to the track and do some sprints because I'll burn off that. I stored extra glycogen. I'll burn it off. That'll be the end of that. I'll go back to, my flexible pathways. And these people don't suffer from the malaise that gets described so often our former colleague, Jimmy, low-carb Jimmy, used to talk about being kicked out of keto when he ate more than 80 grams of carbs a day. Well, I guess that's fine. Kicked out of keto means he felt like crap and he had headaches or whatever. He wasn't metabolically flexible. He was just a guy who learned how to live on 4,500 calories a day worth of fat and a little bit of protein.
Yeah, correct.
It didn't mean it was healthy. It didn't mean it was the right thing to do. It didn't mean that it was a model, a way of orchestrating a diet or a lifestyle. It just meant that he wasn't living to the fullest extent. He wasn't creating any sort of metabolic flexibility, even though he was one of the leaders in the keto movement for a long time.
He was, yeah, and got into trouble, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Hey, Keto Camper, I want to interrupt the video real quick to share with you what I believe is one of the most important nutrients that we should be taking every single day. Most people are deficient in this nutrient, and it's responsible for over 400 enzymatic activities in your body. And your body just doesn't make it, so it's required to be taken in a high-quality supplement or from high-quality foods. The problem with the food is that our soil is depleted, and it's hard to get this quality nutrient. So what is this nutrient? It's called magnesium. But I'm going to share something with you very fascinating. Check this out. Upgraded Formulas has this incredible product called Upgraded Magnesium. And Barton Scott, the developer of this product and company, he's a brilliant guy. He created nanoparticle magnesium, which has the ability to penetrate your membranes and go right into your cells. There's a 99.99% absorption rate. Now, this is unheard of because with other magnesium products, you better believe it's not that high. And there's an interesting study they're doing with Upgraded Mag I want to share with you real quick. Early results from a sleep study with Dr. Sachin Patel showed that the average doctor in the group using this product has achieved an improvement of over 35% in deep sleep, more sleep studies than a double-blind controlled placebo study with Upgraded Magnesium is coming sooner. And you better believe those results are going to be super exciting. We already know this. Upgraded Magnesium is easily the best supplement you can take for better sleep, including deep sleep, muscle aches, cramping, and any other signs of a magnesium deficiency, which is so common, unfortunately. What makes Upgraded Formulas unique, as I mentioned, is that it's a nanoparticle. This means it is absorbed very rapidly and efficiently by your blood cells. They produce a plasma-like version of minerals that the body recognizes and absorbs without digestion. And the results are phenomenal. I really believe just taking this for a couple of nights, you'll notice a big difference. So if you want to get Upgraded Formulas, Upgraded Mag, and any of their products, they also do some incredible hair mineral analysis tests to see your mineral imbalances and deficiencies, etc., and other incredible products that we've referenced before. Head over to upgradedformulas.com and use the coupon code ketosis to get 15% off your entire order. That is upgradedformulas.com. Coupon code is ketosis to get 15% off your entire order. I'm going to drop a link for you down below in the notes of this video. Okay, let's go back to this video. Yeah, metabolic flexibility is metabolic freedom.
Yeah.
The ability to do what you want to do and not let food impact you, not let food control you. I'm sure like when I travel and I know airplane food is toxic, airport food is toxic, then I know I'm just going to let my body do its thing and feed off my body fat. 12 hours, 18 hours, 24 hours.
Use it as an opportunity, not a sacrifice.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. Yeah. So, but I know my body's going to do its thing. I'm going to feel great. So I'm always fasted when I travel, right? This is freedom. And this is different. What you're talking about the metabolism, using different substrates, achieving metabolic flexibility, this is very different than what most people think they need with their metabolism, which is I want a fast metabolism.
Yeah.
Could you explain why that's not the goal?
Yeah. So one of the things that comes with metabolic flexibility is metabolic efficiency. So you become much more efficient at extracting this energy from these substrates. Now, it becomes even more efficient if your gut biome is in good condition and you're not, crapping out half your food because you can't digest it, which happens to a lot of people. So a lot of people who, consume 4,200 calories a day, but they really only absorb half of it because of bad digestion or poor gut microbiome. But metabolic efficiency is really, again, it's thanks to evolution and thanks to what happened as a result of our developing as humans throughout a harsh environment with lots of scarcity. We have this system that is very good at storing excess calories as fuel on the body. And if you think about how that makes sense in the context of survival and evolution, we didn't have 3 meals a day when we were scrounging around as early hominids. When we came across food, we scarfed it down, and the body set up a mechanism to store the excess calories, the calories over and above what we needed at the time, to be stored on the body in very convenient locations, by the way, right above the center of gravity. So instead of fat being stored, on the top, behind the neck, or on the arms, or whatever, it starts at the belly and the hips and the thighs and the butt, because that's the center of gravity. So we had this really elegant, convenient way of storing excess calories as fuel that we carried around with us everywhere we went. We also had the ability to tap into that fuel, and I would say seamlessly, again, without being annoyed or pissed off or hangry that there was no food around. The body just knew how to tap into the fat stores, combust that for energy, create ketones so the brain would thrive in the absence of food. And so that sort of efficiency set up another layer of efficiency, which included the preservation of the sparing, if you will, of amino acids that already circulate in the body. So one of the things that happens in the absence of food, and if you're keto adapted, it doesn't happen if you're a sugar burner, but if you're keto adapted, if you're metabolically flexible, is that when you don't eat, the body doesn't lose muscle. It doesn't cannibalize muscle tissue. Taking a step back, if you're a sugar burner and you haven't built the metabolic machinery to burn fat, your body only knows how to burn carbohydrates. Your brain only really is used to burning glucose. When you deprive the body and the brain of those fuel sources, the brain goes, where the hell's my glucose? Like, this is horrible. And it sends signals to the adrenals to secrete cortisol. Cortisol goes throughout the body to strip the muscles of a few amino acids that it sends to the liver to make glucose, so the brain will be happy. So it's catabolic in that regard. This doesn't happen when you're metabolically flexible, because when your brain knows how to use ketones, when your body and the muscles, when you built the metabolic machinery and your body knows how to access stored body fat, combust the body fat under almost all circumstances, literally up to about 95% VO2 max if you're really good at this, then the brain doesn't get that signal and doesn't secrete the cortisol. And one of the things that happens is there's an upregulation of a protein-sparing system. So amino acids that you would otherwise be sending to turn into glucose or pissing out, deaminating and urinating out, those get recirculated. And so it becomes a closed loop almost when you don't eat. And your body's burning the stored body fat. Some of the fat's going to the liver to create ketones. The ketones are fueling the brain. There's no need you don't cannibalize the muscle tissue because this protein sparing effect is taking place. And then at a deeper level, at the cellular level, cells are now engaging in a thing called autophagy, where they start to consume and combust damaged proteins, damaged fats. They do a little house cleaning, and in doing the house cleaning, they eat the remnants that they've cleaned up and use that for fuel. So it becomes a very efficient system that not only indicates to most people, and I was surprised at this, that you don't need as much food as you think you do. Yeah. And number two, becomes sort of an anti-aging strategy with this autophagy aspect. That's why a lot of people engage in multi-day fasts to seek that autophagy. But it's the idea about quantity of food and how efficient we are. If you really delve into this and you see how efficient the human body is, I would say that if I was describing a diet for somebody, and I said, well, if we only cover the bases that you need, like I know you can eat 4,000 calories a day and not get fat. Lucky you. You must have a fast metabolism. But really all you need is 120 grams of protein every day. Maybe it's 140. It's never much more than that unless you're a bodybuilder. It might be as low as 100, but let's say 100, 120. Let's call it 150. 150 grams of protein a day. That's only 600 calories. And if you're limiting your carbs to vegetables and fruits, you're under 150 there. So that's another 600. We're only at 1,200 calories. So you're going to make the rest up with fat. Well, there's a point at which fat is too much anyway. You like more than 100 grams of fat a day. I mean, I could consume 200 grams of fat a day. But 200 grams of fat a day is 1,800 calories. We're still only at 3,000 calories, right? And if I'm only doing 100 grams of calories a day, 100 grams of fat a day, that's 900 plus 1,200, that's 2,100 calories. That's all I need to thrive in a day. So how is it I could eat 4,000 calories when I was younger or 6,000 when I was an athlete? Well, I could because I had a fast metabolism. So now we get back to this philosophical question. And I see people at the gym all the time, and they're on the treadmill every day, or they're on the elliptical groaning and grunting, and I burned 600 calories on the elliptical today, or 700 on the. I'm like, okay, and fine. And what are you doing with that? Are you racing? Well, I'm not. I don't race. I don't run. What are you doing? Well, I just like to eat. I'm like, dude, wait a minute. You are going to the gym, and you are sweating through that every single day, so you can have a few more bites of something you probably shouldn't have had in the first place. Like, do you see how insane that is to try and build a fast metabolism? In the animal kingdom, fast metabolism is an indicator of early death.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's the animals with the slow metabolisms that live the longest.
Slow and efficient.
So if you want to be a Lamborghini revving at 7,500 RPMs in neutral at a stoplight, and burning the engine out after a year or two of doing that, go for it. But if you'd rather like live your life in a manner which allows you to have all the energy you want at any one point in time, but doesn't force you to do extra work just to deserve extra calories. And in most cases, people who overeat, and I used to be one, they get uncomfortable from overeating. From eating too much at night, and then having the heart rate start racing, and the insulin going up, and that's keeping you awake, and all of the stuff that goes along with it. So I would say, I think most people philosophically would say, Ben, I love to eat, and my whole life is kind of I want to be in that good weight range, so I have to figure out what's the most amount of food I can eat and not gain weight.
So stupid.
Like what's the most amount of this meal I can eat and not be uncomfortable and not gain weight? What's the most amount of this dessert I can have and not feel like a glutton? And for a lot of people, it's, who can get away with it. It doesn't mean that there's not some amount of metabolic harm going on inside as a result of, say, the body revving at a higher temperature all day long, trying to, the thermogenic effect of food, trying to burn off the excess calories rather than store them, which happens to a lot of people. So years ago, I came up with this thought experiment. I said, well, rather than trying to figure out what's the most amount of food I can eat and not gain weight, how about if I figure out what's the least amount of food I can eat, have all the energy I want, maintain muscle mass, or even build muscle mass, never get sick, and most importantly, not be hungry. Because the hunger part of this is what rips everything apart. Yeah. So if I can figure out, if I can tighter my daily intake down to a number that is the 150 grams of protein, the 150 grams total of leafy green vegetables and starchy tubers and fruits, and then some amount of fat, if I can tighter that down, what's the minimum effective dose of food I need to thrive and not be hungry And that, again, is the key, and not be hungry. And you only get there through developing metabolic flexibility. You only get there when you get to the point where, like, oh my God, it's 3:30 and I haven't eaten today. Oh, that's okay, whatever.
Yeah.
I'll have dinner.
It's freedom.
It's absolute freedom. And it's freedom also from, once you get there, it's freedom from not just freedom from hunger and being tethered to appetite and cravings and all of the other negative stuff. It's also freedom from the fear that you're going to cannibalize your own body tissue and lose all your muscle mass. Once you understand how this works, it is so empowering.
Oh, well said. I gave you water, by the way, if you want some water. I have a question regarding fat adaptation versus keto adaptation. I've been looking for studies that show this is the time frame for keto adaptation, and I haven't really found. I mean, I found things that show 6 weeks, like you mentioned, 45 days, 60 days, or some longer, some shorter. But how do we test? I mean, what I use with my students, I want to get your input on this. When I feel like they've made that shift is when their level of benefits kind of hit a new level. So they tell me, oh my gosh, my brain now is just so mentally sharp. I'm 45 days in. That to me is signaling that now they're more keto adapted. But how do we gauge that? How do we test that?
I mean, I would say that might be the best strategy. I'm not a wearables guy. I'm the anti-quantified self. So I base everything on how do you feel. And I think how you feel in that context, how your brain feels, is a critical component of the recognizing that you're becoming keto adapted. Especially if your brain is, if your mental clarity has improved in the absence of any food for any length of time, that's always a good sign. But you know what's funny about this? People brag about being in ketosis. And, ketosis it's an osis. It's not a good thing, right? So
it's a stress.
It's a stress. So when you're in ketosis, for the longest time, the ketogenic crowd, the early adopters, the early fanatics, would brag about being, 5 millimolar, 6 millimolar. And meanwhile, my guys who have been keto for 10 years, like
much lower levels.
I'm 0.5, 0.6. And you would say, well, how could that possibly be? Well, I'll tell you how it can be. When you are fully metabolically flexible and keto adapted, which I still would rather talk about metabolic flexibility, keto adaptation is just part of that. The muscles don't use ketones. So taking a step back, when let's say you're not keto adapted, and you skip 3 meals, you go on some pilgrimage and you decide not to eat, you're a sugar burner and you decide not to eat, you throw off huge amounts of ketones. And when I say throw them off, they're in the bloodstream, you piss them out, they're in your breath, everybody knows you haven't eaten. It's pretty obvious. Yeah. Okay, so that's ketosis. Now, it's not a bad thing, it's not ketoacidosis, but it's ketosis, and you can measure it. And it's an indication that your body is producing ketones from fat in the absence of glucose, but it isn't necessarily a measure of a healthy metabolism. For the longest time, people would, on a daily basis, track their ketones and brag about being, again, 5 or 6 millimolar, and so the muscles don't use ketones if you're fat adapted. If you're fat adapted, basically the muscles go, save the ketones for the brain, pal. Mm-hmm. We don't need them. Early on, when you start into this whole thing, the muscles will use the ketones, and because you're not really fat adapted yet, and so there's this transition period where the muscles are using ketones because there's no glucose or there's not enough, and the brain is still able to work because of the ketones. It's starting to build a metabolic machinery to burn the ketones, but the muscles are like, nah, we got this handle. Like we can, when we become truly metabolically flexible, again, we have all the energy source we need, right, stored in our muscles and certainly subcutaneously in terms of fat. So the brain is the primary user of ketones when you are truly keto adapted. The brain is really the only thing using ketones. Now the brain
can use up to 70%. right?
Yes. And that's just, it may be more. It may be more. But so now you think the brain uses all the ketones. And what is the brain's energy requirements throughout the day? 500 calories. You know, it's maybe 600 calories. It's
about what, 20% of the
20% of your energy quotient requirement for the day. So it's about 25, call it 20 to 25 calories per hour. But the brain does not function the same way muscles. The brain just is steady state. So you go to the gym and you do a heavy leg day, and your leg muscles are using 30 to 50 times as much energy for that work while you're doing that work than they would at rest. Okay? So that's high intensity stuff. There's a lot of caloric throughput. There's a lot of stuff going on. Meanwhile, the brain is controlling all this at the same level of output, 20 to 25 calories per hour. So when you think about the liver, which is which is generating these ketones, and how much work the liver has to do to produce enough ketones for the brain, it's not much. So the liver goes, I don't need to overproduce ketones. What a waste! What an evolutionary waste of energy and resources that is for me to produce ketones and spill them out in the urine or the breath or the sweat. So the liver says, we'll just create this 0.5 millimolar, always have this accessible level of ketones in the bloodstream. The brain can be happy whether it's doing a leg day, taking a nap, or playing a chess master. And there was this thing for a while about how chess masters burn 6,800 calories during.
I remember that.
And I had a thing with Rogan on this because Rogan called me out on it. Rogan said, "Well, I told him about this thing," and Rogan goes, "Wait a minute, don't chess masters burn like 6,800 calories, in a match?" And I'm like, "Yeah, they do, pacing around the room and doing shit." But the brain is still only using a very limited and tighter amount of energy to control all that.
That makes sense. The brain is cool, calm, and collected.
Yes.
So the goal is not to chase ketones. That is the point.
It's not to chase ketones. It's not to develop a fast metabolism. It's to develop metabolic flexibility, metabolic efficiency, and then to build that metabolic machinery to be able to access ketones in the brain easily and make the transition from glucose to ketones from one day to the next without you having to get, again, this sensation that you were kicked out of keto. And
right.
Those are the guys who are bragging about the 6 millimolar, 7 millimolar. Look at me, I'm peeing purple. I mean, it's like strips, not the actual color of the pee.
Yeah, we're correct. Yeah, and those urine strips are only accurate when you're actually not keto adapted, because once you are, it won't even spill out.
And that's my point.
Acetoacetate won't spill out.
And that's my point, because then you're metabolically efficient.
Correct.
Now your
cells are just using it, sucking those.
Your cells
ketones.
are using it, and it's really just your brain cells so the liver isn't even overproducing. The liver has understood through this regulation of genetic switches and enzyme systems just how much it needs to produce to appease the brain, to keep the brain happy. Doesn't need to provide them for the muscles. So when people are doing like long distance endurance activities now and are keto training and keto adapted and they're taking ketone supplements. I don't know if you've seen my buddy Michael Brandt has HVMN.
Yeah, I've had him on the show. Love Michael.
A lot of guys are using this. That only works if you're keto adapted.
Yes.
But it really works really well if you're keto adapted.
Yeah.
So this goes back to the Tim Noakes, who was the sort of godfather of carbohydrate loading and carbohydrate manipulation back in the 80s and 90s. Wrote the book called The Lore of Running, a 900-page tome on training for long-distance running, largely on how to use carbohydrates to fuel the brain. And he talked about the brain being the central governor. And so his theory, which became proven later on, was that when you hit the wall in a marathon, it's not because your legs run out of glycogen. Yes, the glycogen is low. It's because your brain runs out of glucose. And the brain is what's it's the central governor. It's telling you we can't do it anymore. So it's not a lack of glycose in the muscles. It's a lack of glucose to the brain. If you become keto adapted and keto trained and fat adapted, couple of things happen. First of all, you develop, you can perform at a much higher level just using fats and not tap into those precious glycogen stores. Number two, if you become keto adapted, then the brain recognizes that if you're fueling the brain with ketones during an event, you don't get that thing, oh, I better pull over the side of the road and take a nap. Mm-hmm. You don't hit the wall as easily. Now, if you add ketone supplements to that, you've got a real cool, interesting, new level of performance ahead of you.
Yeah, I love that. So I use Ketone IQ, and Lat Mansour and Michael are friends of mine. I do carnivore from time to time, 30 days, 60 days, a couple times per year, Mark. Doing carnivore right now. I'm about 26 days in. And what I've noticed is every Sunday I play basketball at Miami Beach with some of my friends used to join us, by the way. So we play basketball 2 or 3 hours. I play fasted. When I do it when I'm doing carnivore, meaning my glycogen stores are very low, no carbohydrates essential, an hour and a half, 2 hours in, I tend to kind of hit that wall. Even though I'm keto adapted and I got ketones going, but when I take some exogenous ketones before the basketball, I don't hit the wall. And that goes to your point. And it's an additional energy source that my body is using in combination with the ketones I'm producing endogenously.
Right. Yeah, so one of the things about basketball is it's a glycolytic sport. So if you go into it fasted and carnivore, so you're basically, when you're carnivore, you're deep keto and fasted.
Yeah.
You probably haven't built the glycogen stores up to max. I mean, what I would say in something like that is the night before your games, eat 2 sweet potatoes with butter.
I've done that and it's helped.
Yeah. And so then you fill your glycogen stores up.
Yeah.
And again, you haven't lost the ability to burn glycogen. You've just improved your ability to burn fat during you're burning glycogen when you're sprinting down, give me the ball, give me the ball, give me the ball, but when you're jogging back up after a point or something like that, that's all fat. And so you're using, again, that whatever substrate is called upon in that moment, your body knows how to access it without wasting resources.
It's a good tip. Sometimes I'll do the sweet potato. The only reason I'm not doing it now is because I'm doing an experiment with my carnivore where I did lab work day 1, did a stool test day 1. I'm wearing a CGM. I know you're not a big fan of wearables. I'm looking at different heart rate variabilities, and I'm going to do the same test, all the same test again on day 30 or 40 without changing carnivore. Like I wanted to make sure.
That's good.
That's the only reason, but otherwise
again, I would say, because I play ultimate 2 hours.
Frisbee, right? Ultimate Frisbee, yeah.
And it's a fast pace. It's faster than basketball. If you
You play basketball?
I'm not very good at it.
Come join us. Sundays at 10 a.m.
I can make the moves and I can get open. I can't make the shot. So I can pass well, but I can't make the shot.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And I've had those, like I will make a pre-game drink that is ketone, usually ketone esters, and Element.
Big fan of Elements.
So
what's your favorite flavor?
Lime.
Yeah,
citrus lime.
I like the watermelon, but the lime is good too.
Yep.
With I like it in cold
sparkling water. No, I'm telling you, that is,
dude, it's amazing.
No,
right?
that is the thirst quencher to beat all thirst.
The only
quenchers.
challenge is that when you pour the sparkling water in with
fizzes too much.
Yeah, it fizzes too much. So you got to take it slow, mix it.
It's all right.
Pour
It's
more.
all right. It's all right. It's an amazing drink. I'm surprised I haven't seen them talk about it that much. I should talk to Rob and
talk to Rob
because it's an incredible thirst quencher. Almost to the point of you drink maybe too much of it because it's. I
actually did too much.
Yeah.
I was actually doing a couple packets a day, and I was getting like these heart palpitations. I was like, I got to work out or exercise and sweat it out.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about something that's interesting. You're a big proponent of walking.
Yes.
And I want to talk about your company, the shoe company, and tie it into that. But I even heard you say you might be even writing a new book about the benefits of walking.
Yes.
Why do you love it so much?
So it's something that, first of all, that everyone. We're born to walk. We are. The body needs to move, and we're designed to move. We're designed to be moving a lot, and so that's sort of a given. We spent, as our ancestors spent, millions of years walking around the savanna or across the plains or up the mountains. We didn't run that much, as contrary to recent lore. Even though there's a book called Born to Run, most of the persistence hunters don't even run. They certainly don't run every day. They don't train to run. They don't run metronomically at 6-minute miles. They'll sprint a little bit, hide behind a tree, track the animal, walk a little bit, jog a little bit, sprint. and it becomes a 2-hour event. But it's not the same as getting out and running for 2 hours. So we weren't born to run. We are able to run, and it's good that we're able to run. And I'm not saying people shouldn't run, except I sort of am. I'm saying that, like, based on the population dynamics right now, 70% of people in this country are overweight. They shouldn't be running. They should not be running because it's so much more benefit to walking, and there's only a potential hazard in running for these people, a potential injury, a potential. And look, I mean, people. You look at the starting line of the LA Marathon, and it's 40,000 people, and 90% of them are overweight.
Really?
Most of them signed up to, to train as a weight loss program. And
wow,
running is the worst way to try and lose weight, because when you run, if you haven't become fat adapted, and if you don't run with a proper form, which is a 4-foot mid-foot stride landing, if you're a heel striker, there's a lot of jarring. There's a lot of if you haven't learned to burn fats, then what you do is you burn off all your carbohydrate stores, and then you get hungry. Your body says, "Hey, I just burned off all my carbs, all my glycogen's gone. If we're going to do this again tomorrow, I need to refill."
And you lose muscle.
And you lose muscle. So running is catabolic. It courts injury. And if you want to do it, I wrote a book on how to train for people who truly want to train and insist on it. It's called Primal Endurance. But for most people, walking is the single best thing you can do. I mean, yes, you absolutely lift weights, absolutely do some sprinting once in a while, and it doesn't have to be running sprinting. It could be sprinting on an assault bike or on a VersaClimber or on a whatever. Get your heart rate up there. But walking, if people could find it in their lifestyles to walk 45 minutes to an hour a day, 5 days a week, everyone would start to regain a renewed sense of health, of balance, of equilibrium, metabolic efficiency is part of that whole plan of metabolic efficiency.
Just 45 minutes to 60 minutes a day.
I mean, I did an hour and 20. And, it's multitasking. I'm on the phone the whole time. I'm walking briskly. I'm making business calls. I wear my new shoes, and I'll talk about those. Ideally we'd walk barefoot because we were born barefoot. I mean, we're not born with devices on our hands. We use our hands every day. Well, the feet are the same. It's just that we have to accommodate our feet in this world that consists of pavement and concrete and glass and tile and marble and hardwood floors. And everywhere you go, there's a surface that's not good necessarily for foot comfort or foot health. So we need shoes. But over the past 30 or 40 years, I've been just really disappointed at the amount of shoes that have been put on the market in the interest of comfort or foot health that do the exact opposite. So I would say one of the worst things you can wear is a cushion shoe, a thick cushion shoe. We're supposed to feel the ground underneath us. Every time our foot lands, our feet, the bottoms of our feet are supposed to inform our brain of exactly how to bend the ankle, how to bend the knee, how to twist the hip, how to torque, how to flex every muscle to absorb the shock of that one footfall. Multiply that times 10,000 or 20,000 times a day. When we put on these thick, restrictive cushion shoes, we bypass all of that information. And so all of the forces start from the ankle and the knee and the hip, and the body doesn't know how to manipulate, how to adjust, how to accommodate the landing of that foot. So that's a big issue. Number two, most of the footwear we wear today scrunches the big toe and the little toe together. Yeah. And even though you might buy a wide foot, you might go get a double E shoe, it still scrunches the toes together at the front.
Yeah.
So toes have to splay. They're supposed to splay. They're supposed to articulate up and down. And the only way to do this is with a 5-toed shoe. Now, there's been attempts at 5-toed shoes in the past. I don't think they look very good. I don't think they accommodated most people who wanted to walk long distance. Like, I wanted a shoe I could wear and walk on concrete for an hour and a half and not feel like my back hurt or not feel like my knees hurt or feel like I was getting a bone bruise on the bottom of my feet. I wanted a shoe that felt like you're walking barefoot on a putting green. So that's the amount of cushioning we put in these shoes. They're called Peluva, P-E-L-U-V-A, Peluva. They're a 5-toed shoe.
Yes, you can see them right there.
And,
they actually look pretty dope.
Yeah,
I like the style of them.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, we make them in. This is a trainer, but
I gotta get a pair of size 11, Mark.
no, okay,
I like these.
We'll fix you up.
Yeah.
But they allow the foot to to land appropriately. You can feel every surface you walk on. So if you walk on pebbles or if you walk on hard rocks, it feels like a massage. So I love hiking on rocky trails with these. And I've got, we have thousands of people using the shoes now, and I get feedback from a lot of people, a lot of trail runners who are hiking in these for the same reason. It's when you wear a hiking boot and the sole is this thick and the whole thing is stiff,
awful.
The torque that's on your ankles or on your knee every time you misstep on a rock is horrible. It's really bad. So these have application. I mean, people are wearing them in the gym for leg days because you want to be able to feel the ground, feel the earth underneath you. Grab when you're doing lunges or squats or leg presses or deadlifts. I walk backwards on a treadmill, so you push off with the toes. Yeah. If you've followed any of Ben Patrick's work,
yeah, that's how I learned it.
Knees over toes guy.
Yeah.
They're amazing for that. So now we make a leather lace-up pair for work, so you can wear them in a formal setting. I went to a black tie event the other night with my black.
And you wore them.
Yep, and I got tons of compliments.
I love it.
These look great, and they look great with the suit that I had on. I have we've got a loafer style slip on just for kicking around, because we feel that not only should you wear these, not only will you want to wear these once you've tried them a couple times and you experience this toe freedom, but then you'll want shoes in different iterations so you can always have those. Because one of the problems with me was I got so used to this toe freedom, this toe articulation and being able to feel the ground underneath me, and it was just it changes your life in terms of your connection with earth. That I wanted to, I couldn't put on my regular shoes ever again. And I have friends who are in the shoe business. The guys at On are like I've known them. And the guys at Reebok and the guys at Nike and the guys, I was a Nike runner for a long time. I can't wear the shoes anymore. My feet feel too cramped because I know now what it's like to be using the small muscles of my feet. So when I play ultimate frisbee, for instance, I wear these. And I'm running on grass football fields that are not well kept up, that have gopher holes and chuck holes in them. Knock wood, in 15 years of wearing minimalist shoes with 5 toes, I haven't turned an ankle, because the second my foot lands on an uneven surface, the brain already knows how to account for that. It's almost like if you think about, like if you woke up in the middle of the night and you walked across a dark living room carpet that was strewn with Legos, and you're barefoot walking across, and you got to make it across to answer the telephone, but your brain, every time you step, your brain knows exactly how to accommodate that based on the surface. So this is what we're reintroducing to the world. It's a new way of looking at foot health. I think foot health is the new sleep. I think people have ignored foot health for so long. 78% of people complain of foot problems in their lifetime. Half the people have to get some form of accommodation, whether it's orthotics or surgery, bunion surgery, or plantar fasciitis issues. And it doesn't have to be that way. Your foot should be as healthy as every other appendage and organ on your body, but we get so caught up in the fashion and trying to, fit them into these, restrictive cases that don't allow the toes to move and articulate, cut off the blood flow. One of the more recent studies on plantar fasciitis suggests that when the big toe can't move out, can't abduct away from the foot, and is always scrunched in, it cuts off the blood flow to the arch, and that creates plantar fasciosis. So what they call plantar fasciitis, which is an inflammation, isn't really an isis, it's an osis. It's a death of tissue. And it's caused by a lack of circulation. So one of the easy things to do is walk barefoot in your house or around. Wear toe separators and get the toes.
Yoga toes, right?
Yoga toes. A lot of people are doing that.
Yeah, I've done
so what
that.
we have is shoes that do the same thing as yoga toes, except you wear them
Day
all
to
day
day.
long,
Yeah.
and as every step you take, you're passively training your feet. That's why I love walking now, because I know that every step I take, I've got I can feel my toes landing. I can feel each toe articulating and moving off. I push off the big toe so that my feet are getting stronger without me having to be concerned about the stress of, say, running. So, yeah, your feet can get stronger running, but not if they're encased in these shoes that are not allowing. So people will get running shoes and they get injured because they're not using the muscles in their feet. They're just sort of clomping on these pillows.
That's happened to me with basketball shoes before. The high tops, they don't work well for me. Can I use those for basketball too?
So I would say absolutely. You got to train in them.
Yeah,
but I've got ex-NBA guys who are playing scrimmages in these. I've got an ex-NBA guy just tangentially who's playing pickleball in these because he can move. He can get from one area of the court. He's nimble. It's because, again, this is all about midfoot striking. This is about being on the balls of your feet and using your feet that way rather than clomping down with a heel strike.
Maybe it'll elevate my game too. Jeez.
Oh, speaking of elevating your game. So my son is 5'10", and he can jump an inch and a half higher. He can dunk better with the Peluvas on than he can with basketball shoes.
An inch and a half higher.
Yes. Yeah, because who would have thought? Well, who would have thought? Because you've got cushioning in most of the basketball shoes now. You've got some cushioning. So if you think about what it takes to get as you're coming in to plant for a jump to dunk, as you plant, you're dampening. All of your 3 G-forces, 10 G-forces going down into the cushion of the shoe, which is reducing the spring that's gonna coil back up and get you to the top. So if you get rid of that, and now you're just using the coil in your arch and your Achilles to jump, which is what you should be doing, you don't reduce you don't put that shock absorption in there that reduces the height.
That's interesting. Well, I'll be another test subject for you with my basketball game.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. A lot of people, when I play basketball, they're wearing these high tops, and I've never been a fan of the high tops. It restricts your mobility in your ankles. So I've always wore low tops, but I've never wore these type of shoes for basketball. What the bottom of it? What is it made of? Are you still able to ground and get the benefits of grounding, or
so there are very few shoes that allow you to ground.
I know it has to be like 100% leather, right?
Either 100% leather or metal. It has to be some metal coil or some metal spring, and
Very
metal
difficult.
wears down and becomes horrible on hardwood floors. So it's got to be. And I've seen a couple of. We're working on it, right? I'm Clint Ober, who has.
I've had him on the show,
right? So Clint. I'm working with him to see if we can do something like that. But it's not the primary reason for what we do. It'd be another added benefit. So what we have is strategically placed. This is rubber outsole with great grip, very 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 thin, and then 3 millimeters of EVA cushioning insole. Actually, a little bit more than 3, and then we've got and then the rest of the shoe, which is the bottom of the sole inside. So it's a total of 9 millimeters from your heel to the surface of the ground, less than 1 centimeter. So that's, when you're talking about minimalist shoes, that fits the metric of wide, thin, flat, flexible. So these have no drop. In other words, the heel is not lifted. The heel is the same height as the midfoot and the toe. And they're flexible. I could take these off and twist them and bend them because you want to feel every surface. That's that part about feeling, if I walk on a cobblestone road in Europe, it's like amazing. I love it. Every step is different,
like a massage.
And every step you go, okay, I'm building the strength in my feet with every step, and I'm not doing heavy weights. I'm doing 10,000 repetitions of a light weight, but it's still building those muscles. So and then the upper. I think we created an upper that is I think much more attractive than the other alternatives in the 5-toed shoe space.
They're not attractive. They are alternatives.
Yeah, well, I wore those for other ones for 12 years, and I was a big ambassador, and they were on the right track, but it was kind of bad execution, kind of like Atkins and keto, right? Had the right idea, but the execution was kind of faulty.
Good comparison.
So, yeah.
Peluva.com, is that where they can get it?
Peluva.com, yeah.
Yeah, we'll put that in the notes down below. You'll see me rocking mine very, very soon. I have a question on biohacking. And I know I love your perspective on biohacking. Like, your goal is not to live to 140, 160. Like, you just want to live awesome and feel awesome, right?
Right.
But biohacking, like keto, there's pros and cons.
Yeah.
And longevity. And so many people violate the principle of hormesis. When we talk about cold exposure, sauna, exercise, fasting, like ketosis, they think more ketones are better. They think more of it is better. And you even have a story about getting sick from your cold plunge, right? So I'd love for you to talk about the value of understanding hormesis and why you don't want to violate your hormetic zone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the body wants to conserve energy. The body doesn't want to change. It's the nature of entropy. It's the nature of life on the planet, which for most of history, resources were scarce. You didn't want to, as an organism, you didn't want to waste energy. You wanted to conserve just long enough to pass the genetic material along to the next generation. So all life really is about passing the genes along to the next generation. In terms of us as humans trying to outsmart nature, we would say, well, while the body doesn't want to expend energy, I'd like to build some muscle mass. I'd like to look good at the beach. I'd like to look good naked. I'd like to live longer. So I know that muscle mass is an important aspect of that. So I'm going to do some things in the gym that are going to be destructive at a microscopic level, but will prompt my body to repair itself and become even stronger. So it is the Nietzsche, if it doesn't kill me, it makes me stronger kind of thing. So hormesis is, the concept of hormesis is you do something to the body to prompt a change, and hopefully prompt a positive change. So, if you go in the sauna with the hormetic effect is heat shock protein. If you go in a cold plunge, it's brown fat activation, it's anti-inflammatory in nature. There are so many, if you do a sprint on the track, it is a short-term stress that generates blood markers that prompt the body to respond by building stronger, faster muscles. So hormesis is a good thing in the context of time and sort of a ratio of time and stress.
And are you adapting to the stress?
And are you adapting to the stress? Well, what has happened, like with the biohacking community and cold plunge in particular, there's a lot of research on cold plunging and how it reduces inflammation. Okay, but let's talk about that. So if it reduces inflammation, wouldn't that make sense that after a workout, I would want to reduce inflammation and take a cold plunge?
Yeah, it would make sense.
It would make sense, and it doesn't work that way because the hormetic effect of a workout is to get inflamed, to cause inflammation, and then to have the body respond in time with the appropriate amount of rest, the appropriate amount of nutrients over time to build back a little bit stronger. With regard to cold plunging, the hormetic effect could be, again, activation of brown fat. It could be anti-inflammatory if you haven't worked out that day.
Mm-hmm. Or before a workout.
Or before a workout. There's context to how you introduce all these things. And I was doing cold plunging back in Malibu in my unheated pool, 15 years ago. I didn't know it at the time. I was just undergoing a personal experiment because I had been an Ironman triathlete, and I didn't like swimming, and I hated swimming. And I mostly hated swimming because the water was so cold. And I mostly hated water that was cold because it was an 81-degree public pool, and I would get into it and go, ooh,
81 degrees?
Whatever. It was just, I found that to be uncomfortable. And I said, I got to get over this. I got to get over this shit. So I trained myself to be able to walk into a 48-degree pool at 9:30 at night when it's 45 degrees air temperature out and I'm buck naked, and walk into the water and have it be okay and hang out there for a couple of minutes and then get in the jacuzzi and hang out. And my wife would join me in the jacuzzi part of it. And then go to bed. So for me, initially it was a mind game. It was just a head trip. Like I just was training myself to overcome that irrational fear I had of cold water. Like I would tell myself, my mantra, and this is how I coach other people when you walk in, it's not good or bad, it's just a sensation. It's not good or bad, it's just a sensation. So anyway, I got past that. So then cold plunging becomes a thing, and I I mean, I have a cold plunge from the plunge people. And
me too. Oh, same thing. Yeah.
They're great. It's an amazing device.
Ryan here.
It's an amazing device, and I love it, and I use it. It's at my house in Pacific Palisades in California.
It's not here.
No,
you could use mine.
Yeah. Okay. And but what happened was I was coaching so many people on how to do a cold plunge, and then I get used to it, so I'm good at 4 minutes or 5 minutes in certain temperatures, and then somebody would come up to me, a week later and say, "Hey, thanks for the advice, Mark. I've been doing this. I'm doing 6 minutes. How much are you doing now?" And I'm like, "Dude, this is not a dick measuring contest. This is a hormetic experience." And I got to the point a couple times where I'd let me just see what I can do, and I'd do 11 minutes when 3 would have been good, and I'm like, okay, I can do it, but I got sick doing it. Back to the running thing. Just because we can do it doesn't mean we should do it. Just because we can run a marathon doesn't mean we should do a marathon. Just because we can survive 11 minutes in a cold environment doesn't mean we should. So for most people, 2 to 3 minutes of discomfort in a cold plunge is more than adequate to create the hormetic effect that you want for that event. And anything beyond that just becomes, again, it can get out of hand. And I've seen it get out of hand with saunas. I've seen people,
me too,
pass out after too much time in a sauna or get sick after a sauna.
They're violating hormesis.
Yeah, and so it turns, and this is the nature of. Look, we talk about the poison being not so much. I forget what the quote is, but it's more the dose than it is the actual substance itself, right? And so with a lot of these things, I was one of the top marathoners in the country in the late 70s. And I remember one day I was preparing for the New York City Marathon, and I was ready to run 2:14. I was in the best shape of my life. I was crushing it. And I went to the track, and I did 14 halves in like 2:22 to 2:23. And about with 2 to go, I'm starting to feel a little bad. I'm getting a chill down the back of my. I did 2 more, and it basically was the end of my career.
Wow!
Because I was coming off of a 120-mile week. I was so full of myself and thinking that more is better, and if I just can do these other 2, I'll have completed the workout. So what should have been an amazing workout if I'd stopped at 10 of those repeats, and would have been a great hormetic effect to a bad stressor with the extra 6 that I did. So I see this happening a lot, and I have to be careful of it myself every once in a while. I still get caught up in, like, I like riding a fat bike on the beach, but I go out in the heat of the day, right? I go out at 11 o'clock in the morning, and I go out, and it might be 87 degrees and no wind, and I'm going to ride for an hour and 40 minutes, right? So I have to be careful that I don't overdo that stuff because it is the nature. Everything you do in the context of improving, whether it's lifting weights or doing sprints or cold plunge or heat or yoga or
fasting, everything.
Fasting, it is it's a stress, and a hormetic stress. It disrupts hormesis. It disrupts sort of the status quo in the interest and with the goal of creating a ratchet up in fitness or adaptation.
Yeah, well said. I'm so with you on that, Mark. One of the things I teach my students is when they do a cold exposure or a sauna or some sort of hormetic stress, I ask them, how did you feel the rest of the day?
Yeah.
And if they tell me I actually felt wiped out, I got sick, my energy levels dropped, my sleep was bad that night, they did too much. They violated hormesis. But if they told me they felt incredible, like I felt more energized, I felt vibrant, they found a good sweet spot.
Yeah.
So for cold plunging, for example, I think you said getting to a 2 to 3 minute at a good temperature, but would you recommend probably starting like at 15 seconds, 30 seconds? And then building away up.
No. For most people, I would say there are a lot of people that I encounter who, I don't know how you do that, Mark, and how can you possibly and they'll jump in and they'll run out, they'll jump in and they'll almost jump out, towel off and go, whatever. And I'm like, okay, let's start with with 10 seconds with you. And so they'll do 10 seconds, and then I'll say, okay, one more today, just one more. Go back in the sauna, just whatever. And then we'll do 30. And I want you to count the 30. I want you to watch the second hands of the clock or watch the digital output and get to 30. See if you can get to 30. Invariably, they'll get to 45.
There you go.
You know what I mean? So those kind of goals. And then I'll say, okay, that was 45. So now you can do 45. So now every time you come in, try for another 15 seconds.
I love it. That's a great principle right there. You got to build it up, not just with the cold plunge, but even other hormetic stressors, right? Fasting is like a muscle. You build it up as well.
Yep.
I want to wrap this conversation up with two quick things. I love your books. What I love the most about your books, and it's interesting because your books are about, of course, nutrition and fasting and lifestyle, but my favorite thing is not even that. It's the mindset part you put into your books. You talk about Bruce Lipton. You talk about the effects of your thoughts creating protein. That is my jam right there. How important is it to create what I call this mental six-pack, where, of course, we want to eat good foods, but we want to also feed our mind great thoughts? How important is that piece of the puzzle?
It's really important. Again, I go back to how do I feel, right? And if I feel good, I'm going to generate more of those positive thoughts. If I'm feeling bad or I'm feeling depressed, or I looked at my Oura ring, and despite the fact that I thought I got a lot of sleep last night, it's telling me I didn't.
That's why you don't like it, because you don't want a device telling you how you should feel.
Bad data is worse than no data. And again, Oura rings, they've done a great job, and I don't want to trash any of the wearables. I mean, I have a device I wear right now, the Fourth Frontier. It's a portable EKG monitor because I have heart issues from being a runner for so long, and so I'm fat, but it gives me an actual EKG readout, like just good data.
What is it called?
Fourth Frontier.
Okay.
Yep, and Frontier X is the name of the device, but it's I can download my entire workout onto their site 30 seconds after I finish my workout, and look at every single heartbeat in an hour and a half workout, and look at the P wave, the R wave, the RQ.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, and it tells me my breathing rate. It tells me my HRV and my strain in millivolts.
What is your average HRV?
It really varies because, I don't even pay attention to our HRV that much. So this device will show me between 30 and 60.
But that's during the day when you're active.
During the actual workout. I don't wear it outside. So another example of bad data. So an HRV. I was looking at HRV early on, thinking that's kind of interesting because it looks at the heart and the sympathetic parasympathetic connection, and whether or not the heart's beating metronomically, and yet I have a condition that I've brought on from 30 years of overtraining and working my heart to a pulp. PVCs, premature ventricular contraction. So if I'm in a certain zone, I'll skip every third beat. And so it looks amazing on the HRV thing. It's like, whoa, this is your variability is incredible. I'm like, well, not really. I wouldn't look at that. And if it tells me I should go out and train based on that today, I might die.
Yeah, right.
So bad data is worse than no data.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Although I do love HRV for most people. You're the exception there.
Yeah,
I do think it's a good gauge.
Yeah. No. So again, what I teach is intuition. I teach people how to be intuitive.
Love it.
So that's what I do. I'm not trying to get you off of your wearables, but I'm saying I would love for you to be intuitive so that at some point you could throw that CGM away and go, I learned what I learned from my 2 weeks of the CGM. I never need to wear it again because I learned what I learned, right? And there's no new information to be gathered. I know when I'm eating I know when I'm going to raise my glucose, and I know that rice is good for me, but potatoes aren't, or whatever.
Yep.
You learn, you get those learnings, and then you should be able to go through your life without being called upon to go, oh yeah, I'll look that up in Tony Robbins' book, or I got to look that up in Peter Attia's book. Like, what does this mean? No, it's just, how do you feel?
I love it.
That's really my jam.
I love that, Mark. You mentioned you might be writing a new book, or let's confirm. Are you going to write a new book?
Yeah.
It's official?
Yeah.
What's the timeline for that?
It'll probably 6 months, now more than 6 months.
Okay.
I'm very excited about it. It's some cool information.
Oh, I can't wait for that.
Yeah.
We'll bring you back for round 2.
All right, cool.
I'll have your shoes by then too.
Yeah.
Share a little bit about your health coaching certification. There's a lot of people who watch and listen who want to become a health coach, and there's a lot of options out there. So share more about yours.
So I have the Primal Health Coach Institute. We've been around for now almost 8 years. And
Wow.
we've certified 3,000 coaches. We've had about 5,000 people enroll, and it's a tough course. I mean, it is a legit course. We've had MDs take it, nurses, physician's assistants, dentists, chiropractors take it. But then, of course, a lot of personal trainers, a lot of people who are just interested in participating in healthcare. And we've identified that health coaching is probably one of the most ripe areas for opportunity for people with what's going on in the world, and particularly in this country with medical care the way it is and how it's falling apart. So it's an online, self-paced online learning experience. It's very robust. I mean, it is not easy. And once you get your certification, you can coach people. We have several modules on how to build a coaching business, how to get hired by a medical practice to be their coach. Lots of, not just the science. Initially, this started with, I wanted people to be able to understand what I know, like for me to download what I know so that you can understand it. So it started out as just a self-learning certificate. Like, I just want to know what you know, Mark. And then enough people said, oh my God, we should be bringing this out to the world. So it's called the Primal Health Coach Institute. And you can Google us. It's, we're online, and we've got tons of information on what we do, and so many different programs within the certification. Reading blood work, women only certifications with certificates within the master program.
I love how custom it is. Go check that out. It's so important. You're right. There is going to be a rise, even more so than now, of health coaches and the need for coaches, really good coaches. Yeah. Love how it's so custom. I want to take a quick break from the video you're watching to share something with you that has made a big difference with my health and the thousands and thousands of students that I teach all across the world. Now, this is a unique device that has been shown to help with skin health, sore muscles, wrinkles, psoriasis, eczema, scoliosis, migraines, sleep issues, arthritis, acne, scar tissue, wound healing, relaxation, and also boost testosterone levels. What am I talking about? What is this miracle drug? Well, it's not a miracle drug. It's red light therapy. As you can see here, this is called photobiomodulation. And I use this red light therapy device every single day. Not only do I use it, my fiance uses it. Our dogs and cats love it. And the device I have here is from Bon Charge. Bon Charge has a different range of big panels, small panels, from affordable to ones that are a little bit more money depending on how much you want. And I love this product. I feel so good. And it doesn't take a lot of time to get all these benefits. I simply take off my glasses, which is Bon Charge glasses, by the way, turn it on, and I have it running for 20 minutes once a day. And turn it on, and as you can see, I just leave it there on my desk as I work. 10, 20 minutes per day will suffice, and it makes a big difference. You're going to notice a big improvement with your skin health and all the things we mentioned earlier in just a matter of weeks. So if you want to get your hands on this Bon Charge red light device or get their big panels, they also have panels that you could take on the go that are more affordable, then head over to boncharge.com/ketocamp and use the coupon code KETOCAMP to get 15% off your red light device, or as a matter of fact, your entire order. Any product, you could get 15% off with that nice coupon code KETOCAMP. So whether it's these Bon Charge blue light blocking glasses, their sauna blanket, or any of their awesome products, use that coupon code KETOCAMP at checkout. We'll drop a link down below. Go check them out. They are awesome. And let's get back to today's video. Final question as we wrap this up, Mark, and land the plane together. I talk a lot about my favorite supplement. It's called vitamin G, gratitude, and being in a grateful state. The gateway to the heart. So I want to ask you, what are you grateful for today?
I mean, I'm always grateful for my health. I marvel at how healthy and robust I am at my age, and what I'm able to do, and how I'm able to manifest that and explore the world. So when I go to Europe, I'm paddling in stand-up paddling in the most amazing bays in the world, and I'm hiking on some of those incredible hiking paths in the world, and most people can't do that, or a lot of people can't do that. So I'm always grateful for my health and the amount of time I put into educating myself. And part of that is, like, people would say, well, but if you knew then what you know now, what would you do differently? And I'd say nothing. I mean, I made some horrible mistakes, and I've got torn muscles in my hamstrings, and lats, and I've got all kinds of, I got to need a hip replacement, and I've got all kinds of crap going on. I wouldn't change anything because I've dialed in a way of feeling good every day that makes me want to get out of bed and just, go attack the world.
It's very inspirational, Mark. It really is. I'm a 39-year-old man here, and I aspire to be like you when I'm older. I really do. With not just your knowledge, but your view of life, and the way you enjoy your family and your life. I really admire that. We all have Mark to thank for getting the seed oils out of these salad dressings and dips with Primal Kitchen. I mean, so much to credit to you right here for the health movement. But Mark, thank you so much for your time and energy today. We'll put your links and books and resources down below. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to finally interview you. You've been a huge inspiration. So thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Ben.